some tools that are out there for analysis. And I'm hoping I have those. So the first one I've got here is Codec. I've actually talked about it before. This is a static analysis tool. Let me blow this up so it's a little easier to read. And what it does is you can come in, you've got, I think here, if I can go back to, oh, there we go. Oh, my session timed out. Of course it did. Here we go. Okay. So each of these line items is a code repository. Almost all of the tools that I'm going to point to, while you can do specific analysis on a project, almost all of them, especially the cloud-based ones, they're going to connect to like GitHub or Bitbucket or something like that. Or if you've got an internal Git server, that just tends to be everybody, all the cool kids are doing Git, and it's just much easier to make static analysis part of your code commit process. So you're going to see that in these. One I'm not including here, but I do want to mention is also Amazon has got code insight pieces. And if you are generating code through the, we'll call it the Amazon process, where you're looking at their pipelines and their code commit per repository and things like that, there are ways to attach static analysis into that. And their tools are actually are pretty impressive and are going to look somewhat like this. I just didn't want to get, have too many things that we spend time on as part of this. So for this example, we can see, I have a grade for these. These are 4 different repositories, and I have a grade, and we can see I've got issues, and these are percents, I think, based on, in this case, it's gonna be based on my last, my prior commit. And then you can see there's like here, it's got a complexity score. Where do I have duplicate code? If you have tests, some of them will be able to check test coverage. So if I look at one and open it up, and you're gonna see this in a lot of these, I can look at this. I can see that, hey, this analysis has found 54 total issues. I can see issues based on, there's unused code, compatibility, performance, error prone, security, coding style. Coding style is very useful because it gets into best practices for code. And particularly, for example, if you look at things that are regularly moving forward, React, Python, Java, C#, languages that are still evolving on a fairly common basis, one of the problems you run into is that you have code that works fine, but there's a better way to do it. And you're going to see that in some of the things that will come up, as it'll be stuff like, sometimes it's simple things like, hey, I've got an unused import. Those are kinds of things that are easy to correct. Sometimes you'll have, things that may be a problem, like a method has no argument. Here's like an example: break statement may swallow an exception. So this is a case where, maybe there's a try catch, and the way we're doing it, it's never actually going to surface the exception. I'm trying to see. Like here, you'll see stuff that's like, hey, this method could be a function. And you're going to see stuff coding style, like here, redefining built-in sum. There are things that you can do that it's going to offer you a better way to do it. I don't think I have a Java one here to show that, though, but I may be able to get that. Let's see here. Yeah, because these are all, well, this Java, this one may have some Java in there somewhere. Yeah, because this is old stuff. So this is probably going to have that. So I'm going to see, and security will do that as well. And so some of it's things like, hey, strings must use a double quote, blah, 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 blah. I'm trying to see if that's all JavaScript. Maybe I've got one with code patterns. I don't know if I've got any. Oh, so here's some code patterns thing. Oops, that's not what I want. Sorry, I clicked the wrong buttons. Oh, here we go. Let's see if I can do code style. And let's do like Java coding styles. So here's where, so here, like static method name doesn't match this regular expression. So things like that, that's basically going to say, hey, this, and it sometimes it'll give you this. It says, hey, configurable naming, this is what it should be. This is what you typically should see. And so these are things that are not coding issues as much as they're going to be coding standards. And most of these tools also have the ability for you to customize some of that so that you can actually introduce your own coding standards into your static analysis. And so now you've got an automated code review that says, hey, if you did this, if you went through and coded it this way, you need to change it in this other way. So Codec is a good example of that. As you can see, I've seen through this, you go through, you can get an overall grade. Those are your metrics. And so you can see from any given one, you can go take a look at it. You can take a look at your errors, your issues, and these can be things that you can either say, yep, I need to fix it, or no, I don't. And this is a good example right here where, error prone, these are probably bugs. Coding style are things where, hey, this is going to help our maintainability. Security may be something that goes to your organization, your industry, and your requirements there. So Codec, good example. Let's go to, this is Sonar Cloud, which is very similar to Codec, and you're going to see this same kind of thing. As I've got these repositories out there, this one breaks it down a little differently. Is I've got an overall score on bugs, but then also on vulnerabilities. There may be some hotspots, code smell, which is basically it doesn't. It's something where you're not following standards, and then duplication of code. So you see that it's a little different in how it breaks it down, but at the end of the day, you're seeing scores based on varying areas. It's usually going to be things that are related to bugs versus scalability versus maintainability versus stability, but you get to see all that. And then you can go, let's see, this one. Yeah. So in this one, I've got these different repositories I'm looking at, and I can go into a specific one and I can start clicking my way into what are the bugs that it sees. And you're going to see all of these. That's through all these tools. That's the nice thing. Okay, here's the bug. And then they're usually going to have something like, why is this an issue? Why does this matter? And this is where you're going to be able to become a better developer, because it's say, hey, these are things you should avoid. So that's Sonar Cloud. And each of these tools has some level of an introductory or free tier to it. And then as you get further into it, there may be some costs. If you're doing it for publicly available GitHub repositories, you're more likely to have a free, a lot of times it's free as long as it's a public repo. If it's not, then prices may be incurred and you're gonna have to take a look at them. Shift left is another in the same vein of what we've looked at so far. So here you can see, I don't know if I've got, so I've got like here, I've got these different applications. I can take a look into, I can see overall, here's some issues it has. It's not so much a score kind of thing as it's just a total findings, but that would be your metric. Is I want to be getting to the point where I'm seeing less and less of these. Ideally, get it to 0, so I don't have any issues with it. If you want to get a little different, you have Pbs Studio. This one's not a cloud kind of thing. You're going to actually go in and you're going to be able to do static analysis on your code. It's a little different in what its focus is. This one's, C, C++, C#, and Java. Whereas the other ones will actually, the ones I've looked at so far, I've reviewed or talked to you about, they will also do things like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, you've seen Python, PHP, Perl, shell scripts. I mean, it's amazing what is out there as far as what those things, what kind of code that those things will assess for you. Pbs Studio is one if you want to have something that's just a static tool that you run. Potentially, a lot of times these static tools are run as part of your commit process. You have a little hook and you say, okay, when you commit code, it's going to trigger an assessment from the static analyzer, and you're going to be able to see where the code changes are. Sometimes there are ways to put sort of like barriers there that says if your code doesn't have a certain score, or if it introduces more than X number of issues, then it's going to block it and not allow you to commit the code. And that could be, the number could be 0. I worked with one customer where it was an old Subversion repository that was linked to several static code analyzers. And if you didn't pass 100%, your code would not commit, which can be a pain. If you're trying to commit code, you're trying to fix something, and you got to go back and cross all your T's and dot all your I's. But the flip side of that is that means that your code and your repository is as squeaky clean as you can do from an automated perspective. Doesn't mean bugs won't get through, but it does minimize the chance for that. And when you think of continuous integration, continuous deployment, that can be very valuable. It can be very useful, almost necessary, to be really certain of your code before it flows into that process. A tool that we may have talked about way in the past, there's a company called Parasoft that does a lot, but some of their products include, let me see if I can get these to pop up again, is that they have a lot of testing related tools, unit related test tools to generate, auto-generate unit tests and create code coverage, test coverage over your code. But as part of that, there's a lot of static analysis that they have into it. The pricing is usually going to be it's more aimed at enterprise development. So this is something that you're probably not going to get as a individual developer, but it may be something that your organization would want to look into. Let me flip back over wherever I put it to the actual presentation. So I wanted to show you those tools because, one, those are the kinds that almost every one of them, there's ways that you can hook those into your process. And so now when we go back to the code review costs, some of that time spent is going to be reduced because you have these tools that say, hey, I can look at your code and I can already surface that without somebody else having to take time to look at your code. And it reduces the human error. If I review your code, I could easily overlook issues. But if the system does, it's going to highlight those and say, hey, you did this. This matches this pattern that we've decided is not a good one. So fix it, or address it. And that allows you to build a habit because that's just part of it. You've now systematized and automated this process. And so while there are some of those benefits, you're not going to get a lot of cross training by these static analysis tools, but you are going to, because developers are going to have these things spit back issues, they are going to learn how to they're going to, through habits and fixing those, they're going to learn how to do the code right, or at least in line with your standards and maybe the language standards. And so that can be maybe a piece of your code review process, that you do the automation, but you also have the team take a look at some of that. And maybe even the team take a look at what is surfaced by the analysis tools. And you may say, hey, we want to adjust some of those rules because the tool is telling us stuff that we don't want to hear or that we've decided is a non-issue. So what have we learned maybe in going through this? And one, code reviews can improve quality, not only of your code, but of your development team, of your coders and your coding team and your coding environment. There are definitely costs and challenges that are associated with starting into an environment where you produce, where you include code reviews and make that a part of what you produce in day-to-day, release to release. The key to success is consistency and building habits. If you do a code review once in a blue moon and just randomly code review your code, it's just not going to be that effective. You're not going to be able to exercise the muscles that are needed to become better at a code review. It's like everything else. The more you practice, the better you get. And this feedback environment that you have in a code review is perfect for that, where you're doing this as a team, you're getting feedback on it. Everybody's learning how to code better, but also how to review code better. And the other thing, that final little point, is there are a lot of tools that can help us step into this. We don't have to manually code review every line of code that we've generated. We can put these tools in place. And even if we don't have any person actually do a code review, if we just leave the tools in place, that is at least a step in the right direction.